Olá, pessoal, tudo bem? Como vocês estão? Estou aqui hoje com um vídeo muito especial, muito importante para a gente, que é um vídeo com uma participação do Mr. Janssen. Como vocês sabem, o Mr. Janssen é um USCIS Office Director aposentado, que é conselheiro da D4U, e ele tem muita experiência no tópico que nós vamos conversar hoje, que é o tópico de asilo. Nós temos recebido recentemente muitas perguntas sobre aplicações de asilo, porque existem muitos brasileiros que têm aplicado asilo aqui nos Estados Unidos e muitas pessoas têm dúvidas sobre a legalidade disso. Justamente por isso eu chamei o Mr. Janssen para conversar com a gente. Ele é muito experiente nesse tópico e ele tem algumas preocupações em relação a esse comportamento dos brasileiros aplicando asilo. Eu vou compartilhar com ele aqui hoje as nossas perguntas. Vocês mandaram perguntas para a gente, então eu vou compartilhar essas perguntas e a gente vai ter uma conversa muito bacana sobre esse assunto, para a gente conseguir de uma vez por todas esclarecer esse tópico. Vamos lá. So, Mr. Janssen, first of all, I would like to thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be here to answer your questions.
Yeah, so as you know, we are going to talk about asylum today. I shared a little bit about what's going on in the Brazilian community with you, with a lot of people applying for asylum in the United States. And of course, my first question is the most obvious one. I would like to ask you, what is asylum, Mr. Janssen?
Well, that's a good question. I spent a number of years as an asylum officer and a supervisory asylum officer, so I'm pretty aware of what it is and what is required to successfully obtain it. But asylum is an international protection for people that are fleeing persecution or have a well-founded fear of persecution if they should return to their country. Asylum is typically given or allowed to apply for if you are physically present in the United States.
Okay, so if I'm understanding it correctly, it would be a possibility of protection for people who are at risk at their own countries, right?
Right, that's exactly right. The purposes of asylum is if somebody has a fear or has been persecuted based on one of 5 grounds. These are grounds that were created by the United Nations back in the 50s after World War II to respond to the refugee issue that was occurring around the world at that time. So it's a protection that is provided for people that, again, have been persecuted or they fear being persecuted if they should return to their home country based on one of the 5 grounds, which is race, nationality, religion, membership in a particular social group, and political opinion. Just those 5 grounds.
Okay, great. That was actually my second question. What are the grounds for asylum? Because I know you have a lot of experience with asylum, right?
Yeah.
And could you share a little bit some cases of asylum that are actually good cases and that make sense based on those grounds?
Well, typically, a person that has a successful asylum claim is someone that is coming from a country where their government or government officials are persecuting people. And there's different scenarios. There's different reasons why somebody might be persecuted, might have a good claim for asylum. For instance, I mean, I hate to single out a country, but let's say Nicaragua. Let's say Nicaragua, for example, has a lot of its history, a lot of political opinion repression by the current and former governments of Nicaragua. So they have a history of where the government or government officials are going after people for one of those 5 grounds. In the case of Nicaragua, it's probably mostly because of the ground of political opinion. Someone has a different political opinion than the government or government officials, and therefore the government goes after them, jails them, harms them, discriminates against them. So that would be an example in any country, not just Nicaragua, but countries that have those political issues or other issues based on one of the 5 grounds that I mentioned.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I'm asking you that because what we've been hearing a lot is that Brazilians that come to the U.S., and it doesn't matter if they come through the border or if they come and they are admitted through an airport in a country, they're seeking asylum after staying here because of orientation they receive, of course, in order to get a work permit. So a lot of people say, I'm going to apply for asylum, I'm going to get my work permit, and then later on, I'm going to solve my problems. And from what we notice, we don't understand a lot about asylum, and that's why we are here together to talk to you. It sounds a little frivolous, doesn't it? I would like to understand if it makes sense to apply for asylum just to get a work permit, expecting that in the future you will be able to get a green card, even though you're not qualified to apply for it.
Yeah, first of all, this is not new. This goes back in my entire immigration career, where people apply for asylum either to gain a work permit. So there is, in my opinion, my professional opinion and experience, that there is a lot of fraud in the asylum aspect of immigration, because people are taking advantage of the fact that they can get a work permit relatively soon after they file an application. So right now, as people probably have seen on the news, we have millions of people coming through the border, over 200 to 300,000 people per month, which are huge numbers, of course, and probably the vast majority will be applying for asylum because they believe that is the way to go in order to become legal in the United States and in order to get the work permit. So what is new is that the fact that Brazilians are now filing for asylum, because historically Brazilians have not tended to apply for asylum, because Brazil is a relatively stable country. It has a democracy. It has a system of rules and checks and balances, just like the United States. So there historically, there hasn't been a lot of cases where Brazilians have been successful or have applied for asylum in the United States. So that's the new trend, not just for Brazilians, but other people from other countries, which typically would not have a good claim for asylum.
Yeah, that's what we thought too. And a lot of people, when they talk to us and they say, oh, I want to apply for asylum, I want to seek asylum in the US, we ask, why? Now, what are the questions? What are the problems that you have? And they normally say something like that. I've been kidnapped in Brazil once, or I've been robbed in Brazil once. I've been a victim of a crime, something like that. They share a crime, and unfortunately, that's a reality in Brazil. Personally, I have been robbed in Brazil, but I never thought it would be grounds for asylum. And from what you're saying here, that is not enough. That's not enough for a good case, right?
Yeah, typically we see a lot of people that are crossing the border that are fleeing, not persecution, but are fleeing and looking for a better economic life or a better security. Like your example that you gave, a very typical, crime. There's a lot of victims of crime in Brazil and other countries, but that's not a reason for asylum. That the general conditions of crime, instability, civil war, acts of God, things, again, that are not associated with those 5 grounds that I mentioned, typically do not qualify or are eligible for asylum.
Can we recap again? What are the 5 grounds for asylum again?
Yeah, sure. It's race, religion, nationality, political opinion, and membership in a particular social group.
Yeah, so if we think that in Brazil we have freedom of religion and all of those are freedom, it's a democracy, then it doesn't make it possible in general for Brazilians to seek asylum. Is that what
in general? But I would not want to say that no one from Brazil ever qualifies and have a genuine asylum claim, because there may be some cases, rare cases, where somebody may qualify because of one of the 5 grounds.
Yeah, I understand. I've heard some cases, but they're definitely exceptions from what I understand. And in most cases, officers like you were someday understand when a case is a fraudulent case, that someone applied just to get a work permit and when it's actually a good case, right? That's quite obvious, right?
It typically is fairly obvious, and asylum officers become attuned to certain claims and certain nationalities that are making claims that do not jive, or they do not follow what the reality is and what the news and the country conditions are telling us, because asylum officers are well versed in different conditions of different countries, so they're well read, and they read a lot about the conditions in a certain country of the applicants that they are interviewing, so they have an idea what's going on in a particular country like Brazil, and are able to look at the claim and say, well, that just doesn't sound real, because we're not seeing that in the news or the reports that are coming out by the human rights organizations, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, of course. There are things that sound made up. That's what we thought, and that's our big concern, because what's been happening is that people apply for asylum, they seek asylum, they get the work permit, and then months later, years later, they try to solve their long-term processes because they're seeing asylum as a short-term solution for their problems. That is the ability to work, basically. And they try to solve their problems and apply for a employment-based application, for example. They get a sponsor, or they find out that they may be eligible for a waiver of the sponsorship. But then when they get to us, they don't have any status because they are under the asylum application. What we want to ask you, does it ruin the person's ability to get a green card in the future, to apply for asylum through a frivolous case? Does it ruin their immigration journey?
It can.
Yeah.
There's a real possibility that it can affect any future eligibility for any other immigration benefit that exists. So absolutely. And I just wanted to share something with you. The asylum application right now is 12 pages long. Okay, so it is a substantial document. It takes a lot of time and energy to fill it out. And there's a lot of questions about the person, their family members, and their story, their claim. You know, why are you applying for asylum? What do you fear? And why, who, when, and how? So one of the things is that when you get to the signature page, which is page 9, there is a very glaring, in boldface, warning. And it says, warning. Applicants who are in the United States unlawfully are subject to removal if their asylum or withholding claims are not granted by an asylum officer or an immigration judge. Any information provided in completing this application may be used as a basis for the institution of or as evidence in removal proceedings, even if the application is later withdrawn. Okay? Applicants determined to have knowingly made a frivolous application for asylum will be permanently ineligible for any benefits under the Immigration Nationality Act. You may not avoid a frivolous finding simply because someone advised you to provide false information in your asylum application. So that is very specific, and it does, even if your asylum case is never adjudicated, and let's say you're waiting the 2 or 3 years or however long it's going to take to go through and process the millions of cases that are currently being received by USCIS, and you do find another way to become legal, and you do withdraw, you make a formal withdrawal of your asylum application, that application is still going to be with you. It's going to be in your file forever.
It's your immigration history. No one is able to delete that, right?
So in the future, even though this hasn't been adjudicated, an immigration officer later on that is adjudicating and looking at a new application or petition that the person files and decides not to go forward with asylum, well, it doesn't matter. The asylum or the immigration officer can go through this and say, wait a second, hey, looks like fraud, or it's frivolous.
Yeah.
in that case, it could definitely make you ineligible, as it states, for any benefit.
That's very, very important information here, because that's what we suspected. Actually, we suspected of that those frivolous applications, they're actually fraudulent, and USCIS is not going to delete that from your file, even though you are able to withdraw that or to apply for something else. Right. USCIS is going to have your immigration history and will know that you tried to apply for a benefit that you couldn't apply for. That's basically it.
Yeah, and I can tell you, asylum officers and immigration officers take this very seriously. And they do not typically like when someone is not telling the truth,
trying to play the system, right? It sounds like that.
Either in the application or during the interview. So it's a complex thing. Asylum is not something that you should just jump into thinking that, hey, somebody told me all I have to do is apply for asylum. I get my work permit for a few years. Everything is great. And then.
And you know what we hear very often? We hear people saying, so I got my work permit. Now I can't wait to have my permanent document to be able to travel back to Brazil and visit my family. And I'm like, it's not coherent. That's not coherent. If you are at risk in Brazil, why do you want to come back to Brazil? You're actually claiming that you're not able to come back to that country because it's dangerous.
Well, as an asylum officer, I had that happen quite often, where I would conclude the interview and ask them if they had any more questions. And sometimes the question, well, when can I travel back to my country? And I mean, like, wait a minute, you just told me you can't go back to your country. But so that would be a really good indication that there's no fear to go back to the country. So the asylum case is probably frivolous.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Such important information. As I said, it's very unfortunate. It became a trend among the Brazilian community. There are a lot of people applying for asylum, and they think of that as a short-term solution because, as you said, there are a lot of people applying for asylum, seeking asylum right now. It takes many years. I've heard there are cases taking 10, 12 years for them to be processed. Yep. And they remain in the country under that conditional situation of having a work permit, but that will never lead to a green card, that will never lead to immigration freedom in the end of the day, right?
Well, each case is different. I would never say there's a good possibility that a frivolous asylum claim, whether it's adjudicated or not, could negatively affect. And again, the word is could. It may not. It just depends. Each case is different and depends what the new eligibility is, what's in the asylum application. You know, is it truthful to the best of the person's knowledge, or is it just completely frivolous and just blatant lies? So each case is different. But so I would never want to say someone that has applied for asylum and that is possibly frivolous could otherwise not receive a benefit in the future.
Yeah, interesting. One of the questions that one of our followers sent us asked exactly if someone could apply for asylum through a consular process through their countries, being there while they wait for that response. You already said that it's necessary to be in the U.S. in order to apply for asylum, right?
Right. Yeah. You have to physically be in the United States to apply for asylum. Outside the United States, then if someone is requesting protection, it would have to be through the refugee program.
Okay.
And there is no program that I know of for refugees from Brazil. Yeah,
we don't know about that either. That's interesting. Among the questions that we have here, we had people asking, of course, about the consular process. How much it costs is another question. I know nowadays there is the asylum program fee that is paid by employment-based applicants, and that's to fund the asylum program. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is in the new filing fees that went up recently. I think April 1st, where they're trying to offset the cost of the resources of processing asylum claims, because applying for asylum is free. There are no costs.
Right, there are no fees.
There are no fees, so it makes it very difficult for the agency USCIS to fund and maintain asylum. And based on the numbers that we're seeing, they have now are trying to offset some of that by charging this asylum program fee for employment-based petitions and applications, and that's very controversial, and certainly it's not good for people that are applying for employment-based visas. But that's unfortunately the reality of our situation in the United States.
Yeah. But it turns the frivolous applications even more unethical. Let's put it that way, right? Because from what we understand here, there are other people applying for benefits who are paying for that. And you're trying to play the system, not paying any fees. So you're using the government, using the system to apply for something that you couldn't apply for. And that's pretty unethical, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, frivolous claims, which there are a lot, impact the entire immigration system in our country. And it creates delays for the people that are trying to do
things right.
Do it right and do it legally and truthfully. And that's unfortunate. And that's one of the frustrations we all have in this system. But this is a system that our Congress and internationally have been created.
We understand that USCIS needs to fund those applications because, as you said, those are millions of applications. But at the same time, how many of those are frivolous applications that are being funded by people who are trying to do things right? That's definitely a ethical dilemma.
And right. And on the other hand, as well, is there are some real good, genuine asylum claims, and those people are being hurt as well by the frivolous asylum claims, because they too have to
wait and create a backlog. So not only affects people who deserve that, who have that right, but also people who are paying through other applications, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. Would you like to share anything else, Mr. Janssen?
I would, and this is important. There are a lot of people out there, organizations, people that call themselves notarios, that are out there and they are scamming people using the asylum claim work permit ruse, and telling people lies and promising them the world and promising them work permits, et cetera, et cetera. And in many cases, again, if somebody is promising you to get a work permit, whether they tell you it's for asylum or not, you need to be very careful, whether it's a Brazilian or not, because again, this is 12 pages. So it's supposed to be filled out with information provided by the applicant, not provided by somebody else. Okay, because at the end of the day, you're going to put your signature on here saying that this information is your information and you provided it freely and you acknowledge that it is true and correct to the best of your knowledge. So if somebody says sign this page right here, or any immigration benefit page, and you're not seeing the rest of the application and the asylum application, if you're not seeing the other 12 or 11 pages and reading the information to make sure it's correct, then you could, be falling into an immigration scam trap. So it's really important to know what you're signing and that you understand what's in any application, especially an asylum application, because I've had cases where I ask people at the onset of an interview is, first of all, do you know why you're here? Do you know why you're here? You're talking to me, and do you know what's in your application? And some people said, I have no idea. They just said, sign sign here, and I have no idea what's in the application. And so that's a problem. People need to do their due diligence. And if somebody's promising them and they're not showing you what's in the application when you sign, if you don't understand it because it's in English, you need to step back and maybe take pictures of the application itself, what's written in it, and come back another day after you translate it and you understand exactly what's in the application, because that is a typical ruse that a lot of people are out there in the Brazilian community and other communities, and they feel comfortable dealing with their own people from their own country, again, thinking that they're some sort of official or notario, that they have some sort of authority. And typically they don't. They take your money and they're gone, right?
Yeah, no, that's a very important alert. I really thank you for that. That's what we thought too. And in general, I think we can say applying for asylum when you're not within the 5 rounds can not only ruin your plans currently, but permanently, from what I've understood right now. It can ruin and harm your whole immigration journey.
Yeah.
That's the alert.
And as you know, if someone's been here for 2, 3, 4 years or however long they have the work permit, they establish their lives here.
Yeah.
If they have children, their children are in school, they're assimilated, they're integrated into the system, and they have a comfortable life. And then all of a sudden that can go away.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
That's very important alert. So we can say there's no shortcut, right? There's no shortcut through immigration. There's no shortcut. There are people, as you said, very well versed on the other side who know how to analyze those cases properly, and they know when a case is actually frivolous or not.
That's right.
Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, your experience with us. I hope we can talk again soon about something better, some better possibilities for individuals from other countries who want to move to the U.S.
Great. It's my pleasure.
Very nice to talk to you, Mr. Janssen. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.